A few people have sent me this video right here called TJ Kirk on libertarianism. And while I'm not a libertarian, as you'll see, TJ Kirk makes the common package deal between libertarianism and objectivism in this video. But before I get started on this, I gotta ask, does anyone in their right mind still take TJ Kirk, aka the amazing atheist, aka the amazing nihilist? Now I guess he might be calling himself. Does anyone still take TJ Kirk seriously? I remember wondering this a while ago when I saw this video he made, TJ Kirk on Bernie or Bust. And just look at this. Let's take a look at this.
But she should have thought about that before she left me to go to work.
Like, what is this? What's with the cigarette? What's with the makeup? I don't know about you guys, but I think he looks like Gritty, the Philadelphia Flyers mascot, as if Gritty was going through a juggalo phase. And it's strange because a lot of times I see TJ Kirk, I see him like on Joe Rogan, I see him in other places. He sounds like a somewhat reasonable guy. Even if I disagree with him, it sounds like he's somewhat well thought out. But then I see the content he makes for YouTube, and it's just an angry neckbeard ranting and raving about the corporations and the establishment. It's like, thank you, TJ Kirk. Finally, someone finds the courage. Someone finds the testicular fortitude. Someone grows some balls to go and take the corporations and the establishment to task. You barely hear a peep these days about those dastardly corporations. But imagine watching this video for the first time, this Bernie or Bust video, and not knowing anything about TJ Kirk, not knowing anything about this guy. I might come away wondering whether or not this is a parody of Bernie Bros. This kind of looks like a parody of crazy Bernie Bros. Like, who in their right mind is taking this chump seriously? I'm not even sure if it's worth giving TJ Kirk the time of day, listening to him as if his opinions matter, because I even get the sense that TJ Kirk does not think that his opinions matter.
I am impressed by someone who can evict the comforts of meaning from their life, who can admit that what they find meaningful is merely subjective and nothing more.
What you find meaningful is subjective, you guys.
I am impressed by someone who can find the strength to admit that even their most cherished and deeply held principles and convictions are, at the end of the day, nothing more than strongly held opinions.
You hear that? Principles, convictions, ethics. It's just strongly held opinions, man.
When I call myself the amazing atheist, I am not simply telling you that I deny God. I'm telling you that I have embraced nihilism, existentially, ethically, to some degree even metaphysically. I have, in fact, even tinkered with the notion of rebranding myself as the amazing nihilist. However, I already have one failed rebrand under my belt, and I don't feel like adding another.
He has a failed rebrand. I wonder how he assesses that, given that he rejects values and meaning anyway. I often think about this, going back to, is it even worth giving TJ Kirk the time of day? I often wonder this. I often think about this when people send me videos from communist YouTube channels with a few thousand subscribers. I wonder, is it even worth giving these commie bastards the time of day? But one thing you could say about commies and Marxists, even though communism has been proven to be a disaster over and over again, even though Marxism has been discredited over and over again, is that Marxists still have values, or at least they claim to have values, which they would say is the working man. It's the so-called working class. It's the proletariat, which I think is worthy of discussing, considering the growing Marxist influence on the culture, to the point where even many on the so-called right, even they're claiming to be champions of the working class. This is Senator Josh Hawley, Republican, who says, we are the working class party now. That's the future. And why do a lot of people on the so-called right, you know why they like Josh Hawley is because he's taking on the corporations. He's taking on big tech, you guys. And even below him, you'll notice this guy, Patrick Deneen. A lot of you guys might not know who this is, but he's a right-wing intellectual at the University of Notre Dame. Even Ted Cruz recently said that today's Democratic Party, they're the party of the rich. The Republican Party, they're the party of the working class, though. So you hear that, America? We're all Marxists now.
Nothing about this place makes sense.
Now, is Marxism garbage? Of course it is. But at the very least, you could say that Marxists have values. You can't say that about T.J. Kirk, who is admittedly a nihilist. He rejects values, or as he says, he rejects objective morality. It's all just opinions, guys. No wonder why this goof celebrates riots and destruction. Of course, nobody can practice nihilism consistently without turning into an anarchist asshat like the Joker from the Batman movies, and I'm talking about both the Heath Ledger version and the Joaquin Phoenix version of the Joker. And as you'll notice in the background of this video, on TJ's left, he has a big poster of the Joker. He seems to be a fan. And I think this is rather fitting when you consider that anarchy is for clowns. Actually, that's rather rude to clowns, because when you think about it, even clowns have values. At the very least, clowns try to make you smile. They try to make you laugh. They try to make your party more fun, and most importantly, clowns have the common courtesy of letting you know up front to not take them seriously. When clowns put on their big wig and their makeup and their puffy red nose and their tacky-ass colorful clothes and their big floppy shoes, when clowns get all clowned up, what they're saying to you is, please, don't take me seriously. So I guess the only thing that clowns have in common with anarchists is that they should not be taken seriously. But at least clowns have values. By the way, when I talk about anarchists, I'm talking about the ANCRAPs as well. Total clowns. YouTube keeps recommending that I watch this debate between the Marxist Richard Wolff and David Friedman, where I guess David Friedman is debating on behalf of capitalism. Well, actually, if we just privatize the police force and the courts... Shut the hell up, you clown! Seriously, ANCRAPs would be more useful to the cause of capitalism if they focused on shaping balloons into giraffes. Although, going back to TJ, I'm not sure if he ever explicitly said that he's an anarchist, but he is a nihilist. He's the amazing nihilist. And as you'll see in this video about libertarianism, even TJ Kirk cannot get his nihilism straight because his rhetoric heavily implies that he has values.
Much ado has been made as of late about how I've changed over the course of the last few years. In light of this fact, I have decided to do a small series of videos wherein I express my current attitudes towards various subjects that I have addressed in the past. Today, we will talk about libertarianism. When I joined YouTube many eons ago, I considered myself a right-wing libertarian. I believed that free market capitalism was indeed the best means of ensuring a prosperous society.
It is.
And that those who failed to prosper within such a society were in some way defective. I also believed that any attempt to create fairness in society would result in a nightmarish dystopia where entrepreneurial genius was ignored or crushed and laborers were transformed into indolent layabouts who produce nothing. Many of the most hyperbolic arguments right-wingers make against any form of socialistic thought, is that they have their genesis in the writings of Ayn Rand,
So here we go.
I read Ayn Rand at the age of 17. And she had given me exactly what I was looking for at the time, a means of philosophically justifying my own massive ego. In fact, it was a collection of her writings entitled The Virtue of Selfishness that initially captivated me. I was a socially alienated and awkward 17-year-old boy with a rich daddy who had just found a philosopher of not insignificant cultural impact. What did Ayn Rand say to me? She said to me that...
So, if you're keeping score at home, TJ Kirk, he was awkward and he was socially alienated, but he also had this big ego that needed to be justified. Then he read Ayn Rand's Virtue of Selfishness, which I guess justified his big ego for a little bit before eventually concluding that self-esteem was not for him.
Selfishness, greed, and a willingness to exploit others for profit were all great.
Now, exploiting others by trading with them is good, but people like TJ Kirk toss around the term exploit to mean ruthlessly take advantage of others, perhaps maybe sacrificing others to oneself, which is not what Objectivism advocates. I think Leonard Peikoff once said something like, we're given this false choice between cutting your own throat for other people or cutting others' throats for your own behalf. And Objectivism advocates that we just stop cutting people's throats.
And wonderful virtues. She taught that people with wealth were superior, a superior breed of human being.
People with wealth are a superior breed.
Worthy of worship.
And we should worship them.
She taught that the poor and the working class were disgusting parasites whose only...
The poor and the working class are disgusting parasites. First off, maybe TJ Kirk is just speaking colloquially when he uses terms like worship the wealthy, but worship is predicated on faith, and as we know, faith is incompatible with reason. Secondly, this myth that Ayn Rand loved the wealthy and hated the poor, I think this is debunked by the fact that in Atlas Shrugged, a wealthy businessman like James Taggart, he's one of the key villains in the story, whereas Eddie Willers, who's a rather average Joe, he's one of the good guys. So what TJ Kirk is concocting here is a bit of a straw man holocaust.
Real use or function was to serve their betters. Ayn Rand was the glorification of everything base and cruel and loathsome in the human spirit. She was the unrestrained id of capitalism, loving only wealth and the wealthy, but despising most of humankind.
Total straw man holocaust.
Despising compassion, despising empathy, generosity, charity, and any other feeling or institution.
Of course, he claims to have read The Virtue of Selfishness. A lot of stuff in that book that deals with the importance of friendship and love. Life is not just about making the most money as you possibly can.
That asked one person to care about another. Although Ayn Rand herself hated the Libertarian Party, there's no ideological difference between their platform and the tenets of Rand's philosophy of Objectivism.
So he knows enough that Ayn Rand hated the Libertarian Party, but still lumps them together. Oh, libertarianism, objectivism, it's all the same, you guys.
When it comes to this selfish line of thinking, whether it's called libertarianism or objectivism or laissez-faire capitalism or whatever label you want to slap on it, here's what I say about it. I understand fully why I, as a teenage boy with a superiority complex, looking for his place in the world, gravitated towards this ideology. But what I cannot understand for the life of me is how any grown adult of apparently sound mind, could embrace this cruel ethos as if it represents any sort of desirable path forward for our species. To believe that...
So he talks a lot about society and the human species. I mean, why does he care about the human species and society when he's a nihilist? And even if he's going to use the subjectivism excuse, well, that's just what I value, well, okay, why should I listen to you in the first place if it's all just subjective, if it's all just opinions, man?
Some controlled form of capitalism can exist within a prosperous society is a proposition that I find to be intellectually defensible. But the notion that free market capitalism should be the driving force behind all of society and that everything should be commodified and privatized under such a structure is a heavyweight contender in my mind for the worst idea of all time.
Of course, capitalism is not necessarily the driving force. The reason why we need freedom in capitalism is so that individuals can be free to use reason, to use their mind in pursuit of their self-interest. So ultimately, reason would be the driving force in society. TJ Kirk talks a big game in this video about how religion slows down independent thought. You would think that someone who values independent thought would be on board with a society that frees people up so that they can think independently.